So, good afternoon. Today, I want to look at research gaps. And I do believe that identifying research gaps is one of the most difficult things, especially when it comes to the academic research. But what has happened is that AI has made it very easy for us. And we can actually be able to do this today using AI without much ado. Now, today I want to look at I want to identify research gap using AI tool called Bodybox. Bodybox is an AI tool that can help you to identify a research gap, and we actually have it here. We actually have it here. So this is Bodybox 2. So if you look at it, we have a screen there asking you what you want to talk about or what you want to learn about. And what we have now is an area where you are supposed to prompt body box to identify for you a research gap in a given area. But before you actually do that, you need to look for papers or identify papers where you want it to get the the research gap from. And maybe I will take an example and say that suppose I wanted to suppose I wanted to suppose I wanted to look at family businesses, entrepreneurship in family businesses, papers in Kenya. So I need to be specific, identify entrepreneurship in family business papers in Kenya. So I will come here and tell it to continue to identify those papers. So the platform is identifying the papers, and you can see I have the research focus areas. We have the papers there. We have the papers here. We have the papers here. Now, from these papers, we have the papers there. We have so many papers. Actually, let me just go to this other one because it has more papers. It has more papers. So if these, we have all these papers here. All these papers here. I think we have 5 papers here that we can actually be able to use. Now, having gotten the papers, I'll come back here and I will tell the I will prompt the AI to identify a research gap in those papers, identify a research gap in those papers, identify a research gap in those papers, and indicate the type of the research gap identified because I want to know the type of the research gap that is going to be identified. So I'll come here. My money is up. So I'd actually done that. So I've already done that, and you can see the AI identified the research gaps. Now it identified different research gaps, and because I told it to identify the research gaps and tell me the gaps or indicate the gap. So you can see the gaps that it has identified. So there you have one longitudinal study on succession outcome. The existing research appears to focus on cross-sectional, and therefore somebody can actually be able to do a longitudinal study on succession of the family businesses. Then you have the technological adoption in Kenya family businesses. That is a contextual stroke, a theoretical gap that somebody can actually be able to look at. You have the comparative analysis between the urban and family businesses because mostly the researches that have been done are looking at the urban areas, so that is the population gap or the contextual gap. We also have another contextual gap here, gender dynamics in family business and business entrepreneurship. I think some of those papers that I've given there are looking at one gender, and therefore somebody can actually go further and look at these other genders. Then we have the cross-sectional cultural comparison within Kenyans. We can go to culture, different culture, the Indian, the Africans, the Kikuyus, the Luos, and try to see whether there is any difference or whether there is any difference, especially when it comes to the results we are going to get. So all these are the research gaps that have been gotten from some of those paper. Contextual, we have a contextual again in terms of gender. We have the comparative and urban versus the rural. We have the technology adoption, which is the theoretical or the contextual gap. Then we have the methodological gap. So you can see the platform is able to actually identify the different researches that the research gaps that we can actually be able to look at. Now you can go further and suppose you wanted to take the gender gap and you will go further and tell maybe prompt the platform to look for data, data that can actually be able to back up your research gap. And you can see here I've actually prompted the platform to identify the data that can accompany and explain further this research gap. So I've decided to take the gender dynamics in family business entrepreneurship, and you can see we have the statistical evidence there, business ownership demography, compare women and men, and you can see we have the data there, leadership disparity. We have the leadership disparity, especially when it comes to management of some of these businesses. We also have the business performance gaps. Women-owned enterprises earn only 57% of the income that male owners earn. So that's a business performance gap. We have the structural and cultural factors. Kenya women work on average 12.9 hours per day, which is 4.47 hours more than men. That's a challenge. Women constitute 60% of unpaid family workers. Business registration barriers. You can see we have the barrier there. Cultural beliefs and biases, successional planning challenges. So all these are data that we can actually be able to choose and back our research with, especially if we decide to take the 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 dynamics, the gender dynamics as our research gap. So what it tells you is that if you're actually able to take as many papers as possible and attach on this platform, they can actually be able to get you a research gap that you can be able to work on, and you can go further and try to look for data that is going to help you back up your research, and therefore it becomes very easy for you to be able to identify the data. Remember, you have to do the heavy work of looking for the papers. You have to do the heavy work of looking for the papers that you want to use in your research. And then after you have looked for as many papers as possible, then you can come to some of these platforms and they will help you to identify the research gaps that are available in those papers. You can choose the research gap that you want to deal with. And from there, you can continue with the research work easily and without having so many challenges. So thank you very much. And I do hope that I have helped you to understand how you can identify research gaps using some of these AI tools available to us. So thank you and have a nice day.